Good morning or good afternoon, my harvest time prepper friends. My name's Jonathan, and today we're going to be hot canning, pressure canning ground chuck. We just went to the Sam's Club and we found what we thought to be a pretty good price, being it's September 3rd or 4th, I think 3rd maybe, 2020. And what we thought to be a pretty good price on some ground chuck. You see there it was $2.68 a pound. And so today we're going to be pressure canning about 20 pounds of ground chuck. And we've got our pressure canner ready. We've got our lids over there on the stove right there heating up. The pressure canner right there heating up. We've got our jars already. There they are. I'm trying to do this backwards and point. We've got our jars all ready. We've got our funnel ready. Everything's ready. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to start cutting open these packages and getting them cooking in our pot. So hang around with us and we'll kind of walk you through how we do pressure canning ground chuck. All right, so first thing we're going to do is we're going to get this ground chuck open. So let me grab my handy dandy knife. One thing I didn't have ready. We're going to go ahead and get our ground chuck open. We just cut the tube. We've already cleaned the tubes off. We've already wiped them down and whatnot. So I just like to open them this way, and that way I can cut them into chunks before I put them in the pot, and I'm not trying to fight with such a big tube of meat. Put them in there like that. And get these cooking and seasoned up. Today we're just going to be adding some salt and some adobo seasoning to our mix. And it may take us a couple cookings. It may take us a couple cookings to get your our meat going there. Let me just change this around a little bit. I doubt you want to be looking at my big old belly. But get all this meat cooked up because we don't have the largest pot. But nonetheless, I think it'll work out. It's worked for us before. But yeah, we found a pretty good price on this ground chuck. And we want to go ahead and get it cooked and canned, as we don't have much room in our freezer at the moment. So we'll use this for spaghetti, for shepherd's pie, and I do have some soapy water in my sink. That's what you hear me splashing around. We use it for spaghetti. We use it for shepherd's pie. We use it for chili, taco meat, and that the like. I did can some yesterday as well. But this is going to be another batch. Handy dandy spoon here. I'll kind of mash this around and chop it up so I can get more into the pot. So whenever we're pressure canning, I like to, I say we, my wife, she's not here today, but I like to heat this up to just about fully cooked. I know some recipes or whatnot, some people say, well, you can cook it to about 3/4 and then you'll be good. I just like to cook it full, well done, if you will, especially dealing with ground meat and such. So we got all that ready to go. And so what I'm going to do now is I'm going to go ahead and chop this up a little bit more. There we go. And that should be able to, as it cooks down, I'll be able to stir it more. But let me get this on the stove and get it started. And I'm going to cook this at a low temperature because there's so much in the pot. I don't want to run the risk of scorching the bottom. That would kind of defeat the purpose. So we'll get this going, and while it's cooking, I'll put it on. I'll speed the video up so you don't have to sit there and listen to me blabber all afternoon. So hang around, and I'll come back when the meat's done cooking and show you what we do. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, I am back, and you can see the meat is well cooked. I've tasted it for seasoning, and as you may have noticed in the video, I started with all the meat in one pot, and that didn't work out too good. So had to split them up into 2 pots. Worked out a whole lot better. And then seasoned as we went. And then it also, as the meat cooked, I increased the temperature, because for me, as it cooks and generates the juice in the pot, I don't have to worry so much about it sticking or burning at a higher temperature. So that kind of speeds the process up. I start it kind of low and slow to get the juices flowing in the meat, and then we gradually increase the temperature to keep that, or to get that meat cooking. So so now here we go. I've got my T-fal pressure cooker ready. As you can see, if I lift the top on it, maybe it will steam for you a little bit. Not sure. Maybe you can see that or not. But that is, that water's heating. And over here, I've got my lids. They're simmering. I'm just watching my mom can for many, many years. I'm just a believer of preheating my lids. Today they say you don't have to. I just choose to err on the side of caution and to do what I'm comfortable with doing. So that being said, what we're going to do is we're going to turn this meat off, and now we're just going to begin to scoop and funnel into our drawer. I'm sorry, into our drawer. I'm going into the drawer. We're going to begin to scoop and funnel into our jars. And as you noticed, all I did was use some salt, and I used some adobo as well. So that being said, we're going to get those things out of the way, and we're we're going to begin to scoop and funnel into our jars. And it's always important to have your water hot in your pot. Water hot in your pot. In your pressure canner. When you're putting hot food in your jars, you don't want to put cold jars with cold food into a hot pot and the jars burst. So those jars will heat up because of the food, the meat that we're putting in there. And those jars will heat up. And then as we go, once we get everything jarred up, we'll clean our rims off, make sure there's no cracks or chips in our rims. We'll put the seal on there, and then we'll put our rings. In the meantime, what I'm going to do is I'm going to fast forward the video during the jarring process, or maybe we'll just do it in real time, just to show you that I scoop juice and fat and all of those wonderful things into the jar because I like it to cook with whenever when we get ready to eat it. So we just scoop it and put it into the jars, and you kind of see it, and we'll go to about 1 inch of the top. Don't worry, I'll come back and clean up my mess whenever I'm finished up here. So I just stick it in the jar, kind of tap it a little bit, and then you see what sort of head I've got on the jar. And I may come back after the juice settles, and for me, if there's not enough juice in it, I may ladle just a little bit of juice in there, but not much, just to make sure that the meat is not dried out when we go to use it. So that's jar. I'm hoping we can get 7 jars out of this. I think we can, and I want to have a little bit left over so I can make a awesome shepherd's pie for dinner tonight. So we'll continue to scoop and just tap it a little bit. I'm not going to take see how nice that head is on there. I'm not going to take a spatula or anything and cram meat down into the jar. But what this will give us is it gives us about 2 pounds of prepared ground meat for whenever we need it, and or for whatever situation may arise. It's we are harvest time preppers, and we prep for many different things. We live in Florida, so whether it's a hurricane and power outage, or it's if PPHTF, that means when poo-poo hits the fan, you never know. Or if there's some sort of like COVID lockdown, or people say you can't leave your house for what that's happened in other places, and we just don't want to be in a situation to where we are without food, and we like to know the quality of the food that we have. So that's important to us. So whatever your reason for prepping or harvesting or canning, I applaud you for that. And now you know what sort of food your family is eating, and you know where it came from. Although I don't know where this beef came from, but I know how it was prepared. And then we can, or we jar, or we vacuum store, or we a lot of things, different foods, from rice and grains to vegetables and fruit and whatnot. So you can see we got a nice head on there. Just got a few more jars. I do have 9 jars over there, even though my pressure canner only holds 7. What we'll do is, if we have a super lot of meat left over, which we shouldn't, because what I'll do is I'll make a shepherd's pie tonight, and then tomorrow night I'll make some tacos or something like that. We love tacos at our house, and it's good to, we'll have all this meat prepared for that. Again, another jar, And you know, you're not so worried about the oils and the fats and whatnot that get on the jar as you are scooping it out, although you do have the funnel in the jar, because what we're going to do is we will use some white vinegar to clean our rims, clean the rims around the jar prior to putting the seals on there, because you don't want any fat or juice or little small particles, and also I can double check for cracks and chips, but you don't want anything getting between the seal and the top of the jar to break that seal later. So it's just good to always do that. Just use a paper towel with some white vinegar. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to, well, I don't know that I'm going to do that or not. I thought I was going to combine pots, but I might just throw a wreck if I do that. So right now I've got 6 jars done, and this will be my 7th jar. So after this one we'll stop and we'll prep the jars for the pressure canner. Once we make sure we've got enough meat or not enough meat in there. We may have just a little bit too much, so we got there, and we're probably up to 2/3 of meat on our, I'm sorry, 2/3 of juice on our jars. I'll go ahead and show that to you. See there, the juice is up to about right there, so I'm not going to add any here. That's plenty in there for now. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to get my white vinegar, and I'm going to get my jars ready. Kind of close to where they are, and maybe you'll be able to see this if I move things around a little bit, or maybe I can just turn the camera down. Okay, so there we are. We've got the jars. Now I'm just going to grab some paper towels, and I'll pour some white vinegar on the paper towel, and we'll go around and we'll make sure that we got all the grease or splatter or oil residue or anything like that off the jar. Vinegar is great for cleaning, and if it gets in the, you know, if a little bit splashes in there, it's not going to really hurt anything. You'll just have a little bit of pickled ground beef, ground chuck in this case. All right, so we've got those ready. So now what we're going to do is, you can see I've still got meat left over here. Now what we're going to do is we're going to grab some lids, and we'll place our lids on the jar there. These magnets are great. Keep your little fingers from getting all burnt up. I just like to do it all at one time. Some people like to do one jar at a time. I just like to, I don't know if this is the lazy way of doing it or whatnot, but it works for me. And then we want to take our rings, and we just want to twist them on there, not super tight. I'm just going to get it about finger tight, because you don't want your lids to buckle when they're going through the canning process. Okay, I'm not really tightening them down super tight. You don't want to winch down on them, nothing like that. You want the seal, the lid here, to be able to breathe under the ring, and that's going to allow some of the pressure to escape during the canning process. So when it's all done, turn my camera back up here. So when it's all done, you'll be able to have a nice seal. Whoop, there we go. You'll have a nice seal on your cans. Okay. What we've got here is I've got my canner. It's getting all nice and condensated. I've got a towel set up over there for it. And what I'm going to do is, well, I don't need that at this point, is before I do anything, I'm going to change burners. Okay, because this is an elongated burner on that side of the stove. And I'll use it to heat my water up, but I don't use it for the canning process. I'll use this burner over here. Okay, so now what we'll do, be careful not to jiggle your jars, because you don't want any of that fat or juice to get around the seal. And we're just going to set this in there. And I almost forgot, I'm going to add a splash of vinegar to this water. Just helps keep the jars from fogging up. And it's not really a big deal, because you can clean them up when they come out and after you've emptied them. But an ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure. And it looks like I have a little bit too much water in my canner. So I'm going to remove some of it. You kind of see how it's about 3/4 of the way up. I like to have mine about halfway after I have all of the jars in there. But I do let more water heat up than what I typically need. So that way if I remove it, that water is already hot. And I'm not having to add cold water or water that's maybe less hot than this to my pot. So just use a spatula. I'm sorry, we just use a ladle to get that water out. I mean, I could probably use a mug or another small pot, but this is working. We don't have much to take out. So we'll get this water removed, and we'll get our other 2 jars in, and then we'll have another pot of meat back there, and then I can move that to the side, and I'll get preparing it for shepherd's pie and maybe tacos tomorrow night. Okay, so we're going to put another one in here and check our water level. Yeah, that got our water level up a little bit higher, so I'm going to remove just a little bit more water, because I do have 2 more jars to put in there, and those jars that are going in there they displace a lot of water, and it will cause the water level to rise up on your jar. And even if I take too much out at this point, I can always put some of this hot water back in the pot, because it's not like I would be putting cold tap water back in there. Okay, so we'll check this out and see how much that gives us. Yeah, just a little bit too much still. No big deal. And there may be other ways that y'all decide to do it. This is just how I do it when I have too much water in the pot. Okay, so now I got that water out. And it's still just a little bit higher than my liking. And now you're saying, man, this rookie here, he doesn't know what he's doing. Like I say, it's always better not to cut off too much hair than cutting off too much hair. Because if you cut off too much hair, you can't put the hair back on there. Same way with hot water in your canning, in your canner. That should do it. Okay, so I have them evenly spaced away from the wall. Have that one right there in the middle. So now I'm about 2/3 up. So this is perfect. Let me break my phone loose over here. And I'll show you what we're doing. Hold on one second. Okay, so I'm back. I had an emergency phone call I needed to take. But what I was going to do is I was going to show you the inside of the canner. And you can see where my water levels are. And I want to have, you know, I wiggle them around a little bit to make sure that the water can get around everything. And now what I'll do is I will add my lid, and I'll bring this up to pressure. So in my area, because of my altitude, we can at 10 pounds of pressure, and we can at 10 pounds of pressure for 90 minutes. But what we do beforehand is, if you notice on this T-fal pot, there are 3 settings. There's a steam. So we'll turn the heat up here and we'll let this come to a full steam, so what steam is gushing up out of there. And then what we'll do is, after that steam starts coming out, we'll set the timer for 10 minutes. And then after 10 minutes, we'll come over here and we'll change our setting here to number 2, because each one of those numbers represents 5 pounds of pressure. So that's 5, 10, 15. And living in Florida, all I need is 2 pounds of pressure. So let me bring this up to steam, and then I'll be back with you. Okay, Harvest Time Preppers, this is Jonathan back again, and we have our ground meat in the pressure canner. And in our T-fal pressure canner, it just now started steaming. I know you can see that maybe coming up over here. So now I'm going to set my timer for 10 minutes. I set that timer for 10 minutes. And after it's been steaming for 10 minutes, we'll come back and we'll lock the pressure down. And when it reaches pressure, a minimum of 10 pounds of pressure, then we'll start our timer for 90 minutes and be well on our way to some awesome canned ground chuck. Stay tuned. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, you hear that sound? That sound means I need to press. That sound means it's time to start building pressure in our canner. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take the canner and I'm going to switch this over to 2. And now all of that steam that was escaping will now start building pressure inside the canner. And when that gets to 10 on my gauge, when that gets to 10 on my gauge, if you can see it back there, what I'll do is I will start my timer again for 90 minutes. And we'll have some scrumptious ground chuck that will be canned and ready to put on the shelf for whenever PPHTF. Remember, poo-poo hits the fan. Greetings again, Harvest Time Preppers. This is Jonathan back with you. All right, so our pressure canner has reached 10 pounds of pressure, and now we will start our timer for 90 minutes. Just wanted to show that to you there. You can see that may be backwards, but it's at 10 pounds of pressure. So you want it to be at least 10 pounds of pressure. And if it falls below 10 pounds, let me put the timer on. And if it falls below 10 pounds of pressure, then you have to start that 90 minutes all over again. So we're getting closer and closer. Now we're about 90 minutes away to 7 jars of canned goodness. And we'll check back in with you then. Okay, Harvest Time Preppers, we are back. The timer's going off. That means this has been pressure canning for 90 minutes. And what we're going to do now is we are going to turn the stove off. Okay? We're going to turn the stove off. And then I'm going to slide this back ever so gently off of the heat, because I don't want to tip any of the jars over or nothing like that. And I'm just going to put it back over there. And we're going to let this come down to 0 pressure on its own before we attempt to open it. So there we have. I went ahead and pushed it on up to the 15 pressure level, and as you can see, it's dropped to 13 now. And once we removed it from the heat, so we're going to leave the lid on. Don't try to take the lid off. Never try to take the lid off of a pressure canner while it's under pressure. Things like a bomb almost, man. It would just explode and just be a wreck. You'd get hurt and burned and everything else. With that being said, we're going to let that pressure down and give it a few minutes, and then I'm going to come back and we'll take these. We'll take the top off, we'll unwrap the present, and we'll see how the jars of goodness on the inside look. So we'll see you back here in just a few minutes. Hello again, Harvest Time Preppers. We're getting ready to take the top off this pressure canner and unwrap the present. See how these 7 jars did. Let's just release this, and yep, we put that on steam, so all the pressure's out of it. Now I will tell you, whenever I take this top off, it is going to be a hot tamale with all of the steam that's going to come out of there. So I'm going to have to get it out of the way in a hurry, and I'm going to set it on this towel I have over here. So I'm going to break this loose. See, no pressure. So I'm going to move it really fast, otherwise you'll run the risk of getting a little burnt. Fog my glasses up there. And wow, look at there. Everything is intact. Everything is doing as it should. Let me get this camera over here. Can I show you what's going on here? Look at there. You see them? They're still processing in there. So here's what we want to do. We want to take them out ever so delicately with our jar lifter. And I'm going to set them over here on these cooling racks that I have set up. See these cooling racks? These cooling racks will allow air to circulate all around the jars. So here's what we have to be careful of. When we're lifting them out, we do not want to shake them. We want to be very gentle with them. You see they're still processing. And then we're going to take them and we're going to set them down over here on our cooling rack. Okay? And we're just going to let them sit like that. Alright, we'll pull the next one out. I'm going to be careful not to crack against the jars or whatnot, although I do tend to hit my hand on the cabinet. And we're just going to set a couple in the center of those cooling racks, because I don't have the legs extended on those cooling racks. And we don't want, if we try to set it on the edge, the cooling rack will buckle and tip. So see, if I try to set it on the edge of the cooling rack over here, see here, see how it'll kind of pivot up, because I don't have the legs out. And I really don't want to have the legs out, because I'm not sure if the rack will support all 6 or 7 of these bottles. So I'm just going to put 4 in the middle of the racks like that. They're going to be separated. They're not going to be touching. That way air gets all around them. But you can see, even after cooling for a good one. See, if I put it on the edge of the rack, you see how the whole rack picks up? You don't want to do that. You want to bring it back over toward the center where it's a little bit more stable. But you can see where we didn't, you know, whenever we put them in there, the juice was probably 2/3 of the way up on the jars. But now that juice is right at the top of the meat level, which is where we want it. And that way will help keep our yummy deliciousness. Let me move this pot back. It will help keep our yummy deliciousness nice and moist. So there we are. And you can see how even sitting on the counter, those jars are still processing. So we don't want to mess with these jars for the next 12 to 24 hours or so. Give them a chance to seal. And then after they seal and everything's cool on the inside, they'll be ready for storage. But we're just going to leave them be, let them do their thing. And probably within the next 30 minutes to an hour, we'll start hearing some little can pops, some lid pops. They'll start making noise whenever they start pressurizing. Pop, pop. And if you're not familiar with that, sometimes it's kind of scary because you think maybe one of the bottles are cracking or something. But we'll let those sit out for a while. Tomorrow we'll take our rag and we'll clean the tops off of them and clean the bottles real good, and we'll label the lid. We'll put the date, and we'll also put what the contents are. So I hope this video was helpful to somebody, and maybe you learned something, or maybe you see something that I forgot. Who knows? But if you liked the video, hey, click like and click subscribe, and we appreciate you. And we'll see you next time on Harvest Time Preppers.